Hey, this is Carla with Discover Your Center, and I wanted to hop in and just make a little short video, hopefully short, about my recent trip to Whole Foods. Whole Foods is a place that, for me, this isn't the first time. Like, I'm in the checkout and I kind of have this flood of memories. And the memories kind of come from our earlier days of moving here, because we moved from close to the shore of Lake Michigan in Wisconsin, and our home really picked up and followed some big dreams. And I was so grateful we did that. But if you've ever done that, you can see why a lot of people don't do it because it's uncomfortable, it's uneasy. Like you can create more ease in the not so easy, but yeah, it's risk taking, and we did it, and have been really grateful and never looked back. And that first year plus a few months was very challenging. We moved, from our home and everything in Wisconsin to a pretty small apartment in Durham, and small wasn't that big of an issue. It was just that we didn't really have a yard, and we loved green space, and the kids all shared a room, and there's also just multiple factors of of new schools and new everything, right? And also missing some parts of life and relationships that we had left. So Whole Foods was walking distance and driving distance. Like, sometimes we drove there, but it was a place that we frequented. It was the closest grocery store to get to, and I have a number of memories of just that place being almost part of sort of my landing process and my healing process and my remembering who I was process, interestingly enough. And so today, I've had this before, I'm in the checkout, and as I'm paying, I just sort of have this moment of gratitude, and there's so many little bits and pieces that trickle in there. I won't go into all of them, but there's a couple stories I just want to highlight. One is, when we moved here, my youngest daughter really was struggling with the transition, and in particular the school and some other pieces about that. And it was creating some real anxiety symptoms, and just like upset stomach and nervousness and so much more that we were addressing. But it was hard to see her go through that. And Whole Foods sometimes was this space where we would walk to at night and sit on their little patio. They had a patio outside, and watch the moon and have a hot cocoa. And so it became a place of just rest and connection. Sometimes it was that also before school, if we had extra time, because Sylvia would go early, then I would take Ezzy and Moret, and we would maybe sit and share a little breakfast treat or hot cocoa or something, because school was just right around the corner. And again, a place of connection and just sort of almost reflection. Like, in those moments, it was conversation, it was connection, it was just being. And we also ended up receiving food assistance, SNAP program, food stamps, in that first year. And that was a biggie for me. I never thought that I had these judgments of other people, but boy, did I have them of me when I was on it. And I could feel that when I went to the grocery store. Most of the grocery stores around here, when I would go, I always felt like an inconvenience when I pulled out my card, or sometimes I got an eye roll, or I got some interesting reactions, not from everyone, but I could feel them, right? And how much of them also maybe I just created and projected myself because of how I was feeling, very, very possible. But when I went to Whole Foods, which was, groceries were a little bit more expensive, and I was not really sacrificing all the organics. We went to the farmer's market, which fortunately most of the farmers were accepting the EBT. Got these little chips at the time. And Whole Foods, and just again and again, how often I would be in the checkout, and I just felt there was no judgment, and I felt like there was kindness, and I felt grace in that. And I remember one day leaving there, and this woman, we had this interaction. She was complimenting my scarf and different things, and I got out of the store and just thought, oh, what if I could have that kind of grace and kindness towards myself? Why is that experience so difficult for me? And another moment, okay, in Whole Foods was very shortly after that. My mother had come for a visit, and we were walking around the store, and usually my mom and I are together. We kind of talk fast and we walk fast and we get things done, and we were at a slower pace, and then my mom, I remember, stumbled almost a little bit in balance, and I just sort of, said, "Hey Mom, why don't you hold on to the cart?" And we were walking together, and I remember in that moment just having like, wow, life is different, and am I willing just to be with all of this right now? And shortly after that visit, which was very difficult, just sort of adjusting to a different way of being with my mom and in life, I found myself on my knees in my room where I had a little altar, and just sort of like felt like I was doing everything, like the tools that I still use to keep this rhythm. Like I felt like the only reason I wasn't like flying completely out of control and down the spiral was because I had this daily rhythm, of Ayurveda, like trying to align with nature and the seasons. I was looking at bringing in seasonal food, and I was looking at the daily rhythm and still keeping my morning practices and some things that I still felt like, okay, yes, like feeling held, feeling this is right, feeling like moving forward. But boy, it felt hard. And so on my knees, and I just sort of remember putting kind of like my hands up, like, God, source, universe, bring it on. Like, if there's something I'm missing here, can you bring it? Because I know that life doesn't have to be this hard. Like, I know that things aren't easy, but I know that there's another way to be with this, because I could feel myself reacting, right? And maybe you heard this part of the story. 10 days later, my friend Lorelei enters the picture and introduces me to Access Bars. And it's why it's one of the tools that I love to empower others with and teach and share. But I never think it's about any one modality. I don't ever think it's about any one technique, tool, because I think we're each so unique and different, which is part of the teaching of Ayurveda, but that we get to go out and kind of find what's going to work for us. But it was in that first class of Access Bars that it really was the place where I was able to let down some of the walls and barriers, and actually even have the awareness of what the walls and barriers had been. The awareness of what some of them had been, yes, and some of them I didn't even know, but I could feel them dropping, and I could feel more space opening up in my mind and my body and my spirit, like all over, just creating more space and more possibilities, which I had asked for, right? Like I had said the ask, the prayer, the whatever, I just knew it and I was willing to receive it. That is part of it, like what we are willing to receive. And I did this 14-day challenge back in the fall, and so much of this came flooding back to me, like really it is the art of receiving, and in receiving we receive all of it. I posted this week, I embrace life, and let life embrace me. All of life embrace me. And in that moment, that's a part of what it was. And it was even like all of the ways that I thought I was doing things right in yoga and Ayurvedic rhythm and all these things in self-care just didn't feel like they were pulling me through this really difficult time. Well, it was more so that I had all these judgments about I wasn't doing it right, I wasn't doing it enough, and I had great expectations and projections and conclusions all tied up in that. A lot of judgment, okay? When we are willing to drop the walls and barriers, which I will say, when all those tools first came and entered my life post-adoption, they did that for me. Like I could feel the judgments dissipating. I could feel letting go of limiting beliefs. I could feel myself stepping into a more supported place, physically, spiritually, emotionally, energetically, okay? But in this moment, it wasn't about the tools, right? I was using the tools, but I had so many points of views about the tools that had to be there or couldn't be there, that I was I doing it enough? Was I doing it right? And that kept me from actually receiving from them and from me. And in this session, the awareness was like, over here, okay, here's, my mom and Alzheimer's, and like, oh gosh, yes, like this is the new way of living, but I don't really want it. It was also like, oh my God, we're on food stamps. Thank you. I'm grateful for this, and I really don't want it. Everything about this was sort of like, yes, I know I wanted to step into this life, but oh, it's so hard. I don't know that I really want it. So it was everything that I was resisting over here, right? And on the flip side, what was probably more surprising was realizing all of the things that I wasn't willing to receive, like when I actually was receiving gratitude, cutting off my gratitude, when I was actually feeling at ease and joyful, cutting off the capacity, like limiting how much joy I could receive, limiting or feel, limiting how, because you know what, when someone in your family has Alzheimer's, you're not supposed to feel that way. You're supposed to feel this way. When you're moving, everybody else's voices were saying, boy, it must be so hard for you. Moving is really hard. Oh my God, I could never do that. And I started to believe those voices over what was true in my heart. And so I found myself in the space of just, what we resist persists, and the limiting beliefs that were kind of holding some patterns in place and then drawing me back into a bit of, drama, and not willing to embrace all of it and know that I have the capacity, that I have the wisdom to both, one, take care of me, in a way that I could show up for my family, and also know who else and what else I might need to add to my life to make that happen. Like there was a lack of trust, there was a lot of doubt, there was guilt, there was shame, there was blame, there was fear. There were all these things that were coming from a lack mentality, and really what I felt was putting that in place were all the barriers I was trying to hold up so hard. And while I was holding those up, my nervous system was just like pinging all over the place, creating anxiety and overwhelm. And so I guess what I want to invite is that if you're experiencing that overwhelm and that anxiety perpetually, or sometimes you find yourselves in the moment, I want to invite you to know that there is something else possible, and that most of that comes from within you. And then sometimes it's okay to name it, to say it, to embrace it, and then trust the wisdom to enter, like what it is you need in that moment for you. And if that is pulling in someone else, because sometimes when I'm a health coach and we talk about a lot of these things, I'm never saying that we don't need other people in our lives. I'm saying that this inner wisdom is what brings you to the place of knowing who else, what else to add to your life. And no judgment of right or wrong, good or bad, if that is conventional, holistic, alternative, whatever you pull into your life. It's your life. It's your living, it's your body, it's your energy, and you deserve to thrive. And thriving is possible. And that doesn't mean that it's always going to be easy, but we can find more ease in the not so easy. And this is where sometimes there's another tension point in there, which probably is its own whole video, but just the idea of, not feeling enough. Like I've explained, like I felt like all this was me just not feeling I was enough. And the belief over here and the resistance of acknowledging it. But also, can we ever be enough? Can we embrace that too and just sort of say, yes, I am enough? And this culture around me is always sort of sending in these messages, that, be better, do better, create more, and that, especially for women, and if you're an entrepreneur or mom, you're getting a lot of things about parenting and parenting the right way, and boy, trauma-informed parenting, even more. And, if you have a business, create this way, do these steps, and this kind of income is, and so there's all these things that come at us, and it really is sort of it moves in this urgency, it moves in this lack, it can move in sort of the not enoughness if we're not really connected here to the source, right? It can create so many things, all right? But you have everything in here to know what is true for you. And the tools that I've used and teach are the ones that have worked for me. They're not the only ones out there. But what they've done is they've helped me tap into me. The ancient wisdom of yoga and Ayurveda, they're really about helping me find rhythm, really getting that the inner ecosystem here wants to align with the outer ecosystem. And if I drop some of these walls and barriers and fall back into the rhythm and make some tiny choices in my daily patterns, oh my gosh, I can feel more in the flow rather than feeling like I'm constantly swimming upstream. And that, for me personally, has been so nourishing and nurturing for the nervous system. And I've seen what it does for my kids too. I don't force any of the modalities, the tools, the practices I use onto my kids, but they see me using them, right? and they kind of enter the family rhythm. I've got tweens and teens now, and they're at the stage where it's their choice, what they're going to choose. You know, we have limits, right? And we parent with the guidelines, but I'm not with them all day anymore like when they were little. I'm not always knowing what they're eating and exactly the bedtime they're going to sleep at, but I watch them notice themselves, like when they're tired and kind of noticing, yeah, I've been kind of going to bed a little bit late. I think I'm going to go to bed early. And if we can peel away some of the what's right and what's wrong and what's good and what's bad and what's supposed to be and am I doing enough and not enough, and just really tap more into here without the judgment, we get to move into the flow. Okay, so it's a huge inquiry practice, or questions a lot that I do pull from the tools of Access Consciousness. So I want you to know that there's hope and possibility if you're in sort of like these pinging around stages of overwhelm or anxiety. I want you to know that life is full of transitions, and if you're going through one right now, or you're feeling the residue of one past, like, and you're still sort of on that overdrive, because sometimes we come out of something, we feel like, why do I still feel this way? Because that is done. Like we made it through that, but you still have this nervous energy inside. There are ways that we can work with finding a rhythm and opening up space for just coming back to center, coming back to wholeness, coming back to healing, the healing capacity within you that is wisdom and allows you to know who and what else to add. So you are enough. And sometimes when we do get that hit that there's something more, like I did, what if if I go back to that moment, I'm like, okay, maybe I was feeling I wasn't enough, or did I just really sense that there was another possibility? And I leaned into that, because I leaned into that, and in that moment of asking a question and being willing to say, yes, I need something more to move through this, I actually opened up a space for that thing to come in, okay? So this is about not resisting and reacting over here, but really moving into the space of receiving, of learning to respond to all of the stress in life and not react, not be at the effect of it. So I want to empower you to know that there's so many modalities and tools out there, and if I can help you on that journey and accompany you on that journey, I am running a 6-week Root Rise Thrive course next week, second week of March. You can go to discoveryourcenter.com. Under coaching and facilitation, you'll find Root Rise Thrive. On Facebook too, Discover Your Center with Carla. And you can always email me, carla@discoveryourcenter.com. If you're watching this in the future, I'm sure there will be variations of this program continuing in the future. My work is always evolving. My greatest teachers are my kids and my own experience in life and my clients, so I evolve with that. But I'm grateful for you, and I invite you to just acknowledge the places where you have received grace, and if you're not feeling like you're extending that grace and kindness to yourself, like for me, it was just a moment in Whole Foods. Like, what would it take to nourish yourself with kindness and gratitude and grace and a great night's sleep? Because boy, I don't believe in the magic number of how many hours you need, but boy, you know when you're rested and you know when you're not. And are we willing to give ourselves permission for all of these tools and all of this care, knowing that when we do give permission to take care of ourselves and let it all in and embrace all of life, that we have that wisdom, and life will embrace us, and we have a greater capacity to then show up and care for others in our family, even through the not so easy moments, right? Like, I've made it through those. We're in this house, 2 acres, it's beautiful. So many things are wonderful, and still navigating life with Alzheimer's, and now with cancer, and transitions of teens, and so much more. So life is full of transitions. Feel yourself, and in that, feel into what you feel. Feel the feels, know that everything's okay, and go out into the world and be more of you. Live well, be well. Thanks for being here. Namaste.